we're doing. We're just talking.
Yeah.
Sitting out here at Pearl Street Mall.
Well, talking about why people don't talk more.
I think a lot of it's got to do with fear.
Yeah, well, it's all fear. People, but what are they afraid of? And if you start talking to somebody about virtually anything, it's going to push their buttons. They're going to emotionally get riled up. If they're afraid somebody's going to push their buttons, they get all emotionally riled up. It lasts for sometimes days and weeks for some people.
Yeah.
I know it did for me when I was young. I went to John Birch Society meetings. You know who that is?
No.
John Birch was the first American killed by a communist. So they made an anti-communist, very right-wing group of people. They were, I don't know if they still exist today, but I remember going to that just to listen to what they had to say. And boy, my buttons were really pushed. Weeks, I was still rambling around some of the hateful, fear-based ideology they were putting. And then I went to the Communist Party meetings, which, the other side, basically they have the same ideologies, if you look closely,
I love that.
about totalitarianism and so forth. And they had the same fear-based ideologies, but it pushed my buttons still. And my hardest challenges was going to Christian churches, particularly the fundamentalists, because they're so about training people to be afraid. That's just it. That's all it's about, is training people how to be afraid.
Yeah, that's true.
And they train them with words. You think about that analogy I gave you about the owner of slaves. Well, imagine when they brought those slaves over and they had chains on around their necks so they couldn't run away. And to get them to do anything, they hit them with whips. And a year or so later, you could see those same slaves, they no longer had chains on, no longer hit them with whips, but they're doing their job. What changed? They've been programmed with ideologies. So they would first start, when they hit them with a whip, they go nigger, 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 conditioning them to have painful response to that word. And so no longer did they have to pick up a whip and hit them. All you had to do was say the word nigger and they do it to themselves.
Right.
They create all this pain.
Right. And that's what we're doing with modern day Christianity.
That's what doing all the ideology, all the Abrahamic religions are all about. That it's just teaching people to be afraid of some imaginary being flying around in the sky.
Well, there's different sets, within those mainstream religions that do teach the original philosophies. I mean, if you look at the original philosophy of Jesus Christ, modern day Christianity would be the complete opposite of what he taught.
Yep, it is. And the whole purpose is to bring it back. So as I was saying with the slaves, eventually they teach them there's no escape, there's no way you can get away, you're always just going to have to be here a slave. But if you're a good little slave and servant to your masters, you get to go to heaven when you die.
Right, yeah.
Not the heaven that Jesus talked about, which is now.
Right, yep.
You get to go to heaven. So that was the carrot on the stick to get them to be good little slaves and servants to their masters.
Brainwashing.
Yeah, well, that's all it is, indoctrination with these ideologies.
To their script,
and that's why.
Yeah, to their own script.
So that the ruling classes can maintain domination over the masses. And it works. And the people are not smart enough to see it until you come along and you push their buttons enough and you start waking them up, which is what Jesus was doing.
Right.
He was coming around and bearing witness to the truth that he could push people's buttons. And he was getting up there saying all sorts of things and riling them all up and saying, look, if I can do this, so everybody else. Yeah. And you're just a slave to whatever somebody pushes your buttons and tells you to do that. And the big buttons back then was that your parents, your mother and your father, particularly your father, was your Lord. He was the one, you were a slave to him until he died. And through your whole life. And that's why he said, leave your mother and your father and your brother and your sister and your wife. Get away from this slave structure. And of course, modern religion is all about creating that slave structure, doing the exact little thing. But it isn't. You go into China, which isn't religious. And somebody just gave me a thing here. Chinese people saying that they're getting ethnic unity there. Their law that says the same thing that they're doing now at the White House is saying you can't have any ideology that questions Christian ideology. Well, in China, they're doing the same thing. You can't have any ideology that isn't our communist ideology. You can't have any ethnicity of any sort. It's all out. So they're both places are doing the same thing. So it isn't just the Abrahamic religions that does this. I mean, you'd find it with non-Abrahamic religions too. But it's just a part of a culture that they ingrain us. And it's only those people who are smart enough to see what's going on and care enough about themselves to overcome that habit. That's why Howie, I don't think he cares enough about himself to overcome his habit of being so reactive. Even though I've brought it up, I'm just pushing your buttons.
Yeah.
He just wants me to stop pushing the buttons, which is what most people do. They
Leave me
just
in my
say, you
comfort zone."
stop. I'm not going to stop beating myself up. You're going to stop stimulating me to beat myself up.
And that we're switching away from the spirituality definition and moving into the whole health and wellness, because they almost have the similar meanings, but spirituality is more of that, almost like a subset from religious traditions, where like health and wellness is more of the scientific research.
Well, spirituality is an ancient language. You look up the word spirit, it comes from inspire, breathe, but the same thing, the Holy Spirit, the word Holy Spirit from the Bible, that's a whole breath if you look it up, breathe, but inspiring people. And when people are being inspired or intimidated, the religion turns it into intimidation. Not inspire people to go out and help one another, but intimidating them to stay in line and be good slaves and servants to the master.
Right.
Totally different, but using that language is something maybe you want to walk away from, getting into, say, healthier.
Right.
Healthier strategy, mental health, emotional health, because emotional health is a major issue. If you go into the psych wards, you see a lot of them are people in the psych wards are religious people because of all these ideas they get in there, all these concepts. It just creates a lot of tension and fear in them.
Looking at it full circle, for me personally, I was so interested in studying religious traditions, because I wanted to learn this philosophical view, this deep meaning of life and understanding. And I realized that no matter which holy book you finish reading, at the end of every holy text, there you are. Mm-hmm. And they all keep pointing back to the same answer: is yourself. Living the divine,
learning how to operate the human instrument. That's basically what we started. In what analogy I really like is potty training. When I remember my little brother, who's 8.5 years younger than me, and I remember him getting potty trained, and my dad would go to him and say, "Do you need to go potty?" And that first question was to get him to be conscious inside his body of what was going on in the present moment. And he goes, "I think so." So he said, "Okay, let's take you to the bathroom." And they set him on a little plastic toilet that he had there, turn on the water for a little bit of dripping and stuff. He says, "Go pee pee poo poo now." Right. And so then the next level of training is to get them to control these inner functions in their body, which is the bladder and the bowels, and get the peristalsis moving and so forth. Release the sphincter or whatever that muscle is. Yeah. And so when you gain that ability, you've mastered part of the body. Right. They don't teach us generally, and they don't want us to learn how to control our mind and our emotions. In school, you learn some discipline of the mind, but not the emotion. No place does it teach you emotion, because they want us to have emotional reaction with words so they can use that to control and manipulate. That's why they give us philosophies and theologies, just so they can say, well, if you're not a good little boy or girl, Santa's not going to give you anything. And when you finally realize that Santa Claus was a lie, then they hand you a Bible, tell you Jesus Christ is coming to town, he's making a list, checking the toys, going to find out who's naughty or not. And if you're not a good little boy or girl, you don't get to go to heaven or reincarnate or whatever it happens to be. Yep. It's just a control mechanism.
Right. And then for people that are finding genuine help through religions and are becoming better people and giving back to the communities and actually uplifting one another, if they're looking past the label of religion, the label of spirituality, and actually doing the humane work of being a good human being? Would you try to encourage those people to keep up with their practices and their devotions?
I would encourage them to keep questioning until you're 100% satisfied, until you experience this as heaven, kingdom of heaven that is at hand, that Jesus talked about. I don't think that those people are going out, like, you want to go out and find the homeless people and the drug addicts and so forth, and help them. And using fundamental religion might be a tool, but there are other tools than trying to create fear in people,
really
which is what that does. If you go out with a fundamentalist, you're going to burn in hell for all eternity, you're just using fear to motivate them, as opposed to, how about loving yourself enough to take care of yourself? And you're worthy of it. If you think you're worthy of it, do you care enough about yourself to make a change? I will help you. So not using that fear-based ideology, but using a health-based ideology, a love, joy-based ideology.
Leading by example, right? Being the change you want to see. And do you know anything about the Maharaji effect, where you're projecting that state of in heaven now?
Projecting that what?
When you're in the heaven, when you're in that nirvana, and you perceive this reality as heaven, and your vibrational frequency is at a resonating pace that connects with everybody else around you, right? So if I'm filled with this deep inner state of peace, then people around me can feel and are also radiating in that peace.
Yes, I know that works. I've done that times. I don't do that enough. So that's why I need people like you to remind me.
Community.
Because I don't do that.
Community, that's what it's all about.
So one of the things, I had a heart condition first of the month, and so I'm now reading a book all about that kind of heart condition. And I was telling my significant other, who was a nurse, is a nurse, that I had all this emotional reactions. I was actually, physiological reactions, which emotions are, that I was getting lightheaded and so forth and couldn't read just about what's going on. And she kept coming back at me with my words, saying, it's just words, it can't hurt you. You gotta practice doing that. And I go, you're right, 100%. So one of the reasons I'm out here wanting to do this is I'm afraid to stand up and start talking. And this is a start. You're helping me. And I want to not always be doing it all alone. I went around this country doing it all alone. And I was tired of doing it. I wanted to find other people to do it with me. We had that originally here, but that disintegrated after both of us were getting pain in our chest from speaking too loudly. So
somebody cast a spell on you, maybe.
Well, this is a team effort. And Jesus was wrong at times too, but there was nobody there who had the strength and character to engage him. Peter tried to point out how stupid he was being when he was talking about committing suicide. But he didn't. Jesus said, get behind me, you Satan. What you speak of is the will of men, and what I speak of is the will of God. And they say, but if Peter had been stronger, he goes, but I'm God too, and I don't want to die. I don't want anybody to die. I want us to live. So why don't you choose instead to live for your friends instead of die for them? Isn't that greater? Life is greater than death. And if he had had the strength to do that, but he didn't. But that's what we all need.
I agree.
You can do the same thing with Siddhartha, who was called Buddha. He had some stupid things too. But if you have the courage to question it, look at it. I've never found a Buddhist that even had the courage to look at it, let alone question. I've never found a Christian who has it. Even as I brought this topic up, the stupidity of Jesus, you see how Jack resists that. Comes up with some stupid physiological, metaphysical ideology to justify his stupidity, which is exactly what the Christians did.
Right.
And they created a religion around that ideology of stupidity.
It's a deep rabbit hole, it is, but it's somewhere people need to question and say, when they check in on themselves, am I still being of ego or am I being of service? Right? Because when we get these philosophies and we feel so passionate about them, we have to ask ourselves, are these of useful to the general public now? And I do believe we're entering into a time of a deep, profound knowledge in society. I think things have been too chaotic for too long. And I think people are starting to wake up, they're starting to question, and they're starting to look for answers like this.
Yeah, I think there is a big need for these kind of conversations to go out there. I mean, so that people can see it. Got to take responsibility, but that's the thing that a lot of people don't get. It takes a village. It's that we're all in this. Even the Fuhrer, which we call Trump here, or Jesus, or the Buddha, or Gandhi, any one of these people that we all admire and put up there and say, we want you to lead us, they're stupid sometimes too. And we're all in this, we have to engage. And that's why the process that we're doing, where we're engaging each other and questioning each other, that they do in universities, that they do in the scientific world.
Right.
But you don't do in the religious world.
Right.
They don't encourage you. You go into any church in town today, you could have gone to any church in town, and you don't get to go raise a question of what's being said up there. How about, I don't understand this. What about this? You're not allowed to do that. It's indoctrination centers. Now, Jack does it at Unity. He comes and says, well, we're going to go discuss it if you want to come up and talk about it later. That's one of the few places you're going to find where somebody can actually challenge it.
Yeah.
But you can't, most of them, they're indoctrination centers. And you go to political rallies, you can't really challenge the politicians. You know, our political system has become so unbelievably corrupt because of it. You know, it's gone too big. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the federal government of the United States has become an absolutely corrupt institution.
Dictatorship.
But
authoritarian.
it starts
monarchy.
here, and with each of us. No, well, it starts with each of us individually.
Right.
But then it starts here. We start encouraging each other to question each other and everything. We go, okay, maybe I think, or maybe I'm coming from an ego. And Jesus obviously came from his ego. It was very true. The very thing, he says, the very rocks will sing out a sonnet. What an ego trip he was on.
Right.
What a stupid ego trip.
That's true. That's a verse most people miss too.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't read, and they don't want to talk about it. They, oh no, he was great, he was God. Yes, he was God, but so are you, and so is everybody else. We're all God. If you think about one of the definitions, if you look up in a dictionary, the word God, and you'll see that in scriptures, is that it says God is the ultimate authority. An honest person will eventually come and realize, I am that ultimate authority for me, and you are for you. So no matter what the scriptures say, I'm the one who chooses to believe that scripture, or I can go to some other scripture or some other page. And I am that ultimate authority. That's what people who are honest and smart will recognize, that I am God. I've always been, always will be. I can only pretend to not be. And to give my power away to somebody else and be a good slave and servant to the master. And I won't like that, but that's because I just haven't questioned it. And in times like it's getting to be in this country, it can be dangerous, like it was for Jesus. If you go to Afghanistan or Pakistan and start saying the same things Jesus said, they'll kill you in a heartbeat. And if you go to Alabama, Georgia, Texas, pretty much sure that they would do the same thing there, because they're just as dark and primitive. I have been literally kicked out of the churches just for quoting Jesus.
They like the idea of the Jesus that they don't have to do any work for. That all they have to do is, I accept this into my heart, and then all sins are forgiven. And that's an illusion. That's a fairy tale that, you know, the mainstream has fed these people. You know, these people are going around with this ideology and not putting in any actual work, and they're expecting this to be an excuse.
Yep.
I think you're spot on. I come back to love.
Yeah,
Come back
that's
to
the
love.
skill set.
To love each other, to understand each other, to be able to sit down and have a conversation with each other. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of guts to look somebody in the eyes and be like, you know what? I think you're dead ass wrong, but I love you anyway. And that's what we're out here doing on Pro Street. We're we're talking with people, we're trying to inspire them, we're lifting them up at the same time, right?
Jesus had this one insight that was really, I consider, super insight, which he labeled love thy enemy. And if you were to think about that, of course, who is our worst enemy? We are. We are our own worst enemy.
Yes.
And so when you practice a positive emotion like love or gratitude or joy or something, you're releasing neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. And what that does is that they slow down the transmission of the electrical charge that comes from the brain that dissipates into the muscles that causes the tension, which gives you the negative experience. So when you're practicing love, joy, gratitude, anything, you're relaxing and you have less discomfort in your body.
Right.
And that's how you get the experience of heaven, is just by practicing.
Right.
So somebody who's practicing love or feeling love, just doing it, not needing any external motivation for it, because they enjoy the feeling in their body of it, they're in heaven in that moment.
I love that.
In that presence. That is heaven.
That is true.
When you're able to unconditionally love all that life has to offer, that is the kingdom of heaven that's at hand.
And a lot of mainstream religions can
about.
offer that to people, though. A lot of mainstream religions can offer that to people if they dive deep enough into their texts.
But they won't, because they're into the business. And churches are business. Just like unity is a business. And so they're going to have to get people to keep coming back over and over and not to graduate. If you read the Bible, it talks about steps on how you graduate. Jesus graduated. It shows in other places, here's how you'll graduate. You become one of us.
Yeah.
But they don't want you to know that they graduate. They want you to keep coming back and putting in more money every week. And that's the business model.
That's the business model.
So they're not going to encourage people to look at this stuff.
Yeah.
Boy, that would be a question to ask Jack. He says, how do you graduate from unity? How do you get, what's the process? What are you teaching people on how they get out of here and graduate?
Yeah, start their own unity, right?
What?
Start their own unity.
Yeah, that's probably what. But Jesus didn't build a building. He didn't go inside of one.
We are the church.
And he
this
just said, go out and do it. This is it.
Yeah.
This is where it's at.
And some people aren't here yet, and that's okay too. You know, some people need that community service to make them feel whole or connected, or those discussion groups that go around in circles and don't go anywhere. But I mean, as long as they're putting in that minuscule drop towards the greater good, right? Then they're a part of the community, they're part of the tribe. They're sharing in the love frequency.
Putting something back, yes. And I am just as guilty as those people of not. I don't at times. And I want to be. I haven't found it, and I'm afraid to do it, like a lot of people. I admit I'm afraid.
Zim, I appreciate talking with you on this, brother. I like to give a peace sign to the camera and remind them world peace is possible.
No, we don't want world peace. We want inner peace. We
Peace.
want peace with the world.
He doesn't want to.
We want peace with the world.